picture this. You are immediately dropping down into this super high-pressure clinical basement of BBC Radio 1's Egton House.
Such an intense environment.
Right. And the date is September 12th, 1993. You are looking at a strict 4-hour studio clock, and there are exactly 20 minutes left on it. And that physical strain created a darker, cavernous, tension-filled acoustic resonance that is completely absent from the original 1970s recording.
Yeah, and then there is the environment of the room itself. Corgan actually blamed the antiquated 1971 BBC equipment for the sound quality.
Like, he was complaining afterward that the recording was way too hissy.
He did. But that underlying hiss is what engineers call literal tape bias. It's the magnetic limitations of that older tape fighting to capture the audio.
But that bias accidentally created this claustrophobic lullaby space. It basically drags you directly into the room with a broken performer who is completely out of time.
It really does put you right there in the room.
You're listening to Deep Cuts and Deep Thinking. Our mission for this deep dive is to explore exactly how a technical mistake and a frantic race against the clock transformed a pristine classic rock anthem into a raw Generation X confessional.
It's such a fascinating transformation.
So let's start by figuring out why this specific song held such immense emotional gravity for Corgan in the first place. It seems like there's a striking parallel between these two artists.
There really is. I looked at their respective ages and just, the sheer scale of their desperation. And even though they were recording 20 years apart, they are essentially the same person at that pivotal moment.
That's a great way to look at it. Let's look at Stevie Nicks first.
Right. So the year is 1973 or maybe early 1974. She and Lindsey Buckingham had just released their debut album as a duo, and, well, it completely flopped.
Ouch. I mean, being dropped by a record label is a tough pill to swallow. But what was her actual day-to-day life looking like back then?
It was rough. She was dropped by Polydor Records with zero apology. She had exactly $40 to her name, trying to keep them afloat by working as a waitress and a cleaning lady.
Wow, just $40. And where was Buckingham?
Buckingham is out on the road, touring as a backing guitarist just to pay the rent, and he's actually sick with mono. So Nicks is stuck in Aspen, Colorado, completely isolated.
That sounds miserable.
It was the first time she'd ever lived in the snow. Her only companions are a freezing Toyota with doors frozen shut and a poodle named Ginny.
That paints a remarkably bleak picture. Just trapped in a frozen landscape with a dog and a car that won't even open.
Right. And the breaking point was her father. He was a highly successful corporate executive, and he gave her a strict 6-month ultimatum.
Uh-oh. What was the deal?
Basically, give the music industry 6 more months, and if nothing happens, she had to pack it in, quit music entirely, and go back to college.
Talk about pressure.
So she's standing at a window in Aspen, looking up at the Rocky Mountains, and she writes Landslide in about 5 minutes. The imagery of the mountain and the avalanche becomes a metaphor for her entire life.
Her romantic partnership, her self-worth, her artistic identity, they are all standing on a knife's edge.
Exactly. She's deciding whether to surrender to the avalanche or survive it.
So fast forward exactly 20 years. It is 1993, and Billy Corgan is also 26 years old.
Yep. He is recording the Smashing Pumpkins' second album, Siamese Dream, at Triclops Sound Studios in Marietta, Georgia.
And he is completely unraveling under the pressure, right? Having to create a massive commercial breakthrough for Virgin Records.
Unraveling is putting it mildly. He's dealing with acute suicidal ideation, like meticulously planning out his own funeral while trying to track this record.
But wait, how does his situation compare to Nicks? Because, she was broke and isolated in the snow, but he was in a major studio on the verge of becoming a massive rock star.
Well, he carried a massive amount of psychological baggage into that studio. Corgan grew up with a deeply abusive stepmother and an emotionally absent father.
I think I'm Dale Corgan, right?
Yeah, his dad was a drug-dealing blues guitarist. And that trauma caused chronic childhood bedwetting, which is a physical manifestation of profound terror and a total loss of agency in his own home.
That is so heavy. And the band wasn't doing much better, were they?
Not at all. His band is fracturing in real time. Drummer Jimmy Chamberlain is vanishing on dangerous heroin benders. Guitarist James Iha and bassist Darcy Retzky have just gone through a bitter romantic breakup and are barely speaking to each other.
So Corgan is just left holding the bag.
Pretty much. He is so isolated, he ends up recording almost all the lead guitar and bass parts himself.
Wow. So think of this song like an emotional safe house. Like Nicks built it to shelter herself from failure, and 20 years later, Corgan broke into it to hide from the crushing weight of his own success.
That's a perfect analogy. Landslide is fundamentally about the fear of the future. It is about looking at everything you've built and being terrified it's going to wash away.
Right. The stakes were just incredibly high for both of them.
Yeah, and the lyric "Child Within My Heart" was a deeply poetic turn of phrase for Nicks. But for Corgan, it wasn't a metaphor. It was a literal, direct address to his deeply traumatized inner child, mourning the protection he never received from his parents.
It totally makes sense that his head was in a dark place. But, I'm stuck on how that mental state actually made its way onto the magnetic tape. You mentioned in the beginning that he played it totally wrong.
He did. And to understand the mistake, we have to look at the pristine architecture of Lindsey Buckingham's original guitar part first. Buckingham places a capo on the 3rd fret of his Martin D18.
Though, for anyone who hasn't played guitar, what is a capo actually doing to the physical instrument?
Basically, a capo is a clamp. It clamps down across all the strings on the neck, physically shortening their vibrating length.
Okay, so making the strings shorter.
Right, and because the strings are shorter, they vibrate at a higher pitch. That allows Buckingham to play standard, comfortable C-shaped chords, but they ring out much higher.
And he's using that Travis picking style, right?
Exactly. He's using a Travis picking technique where his thumb keeps a steady rhythm on the bass string, acting almost like a heartbeat, while his fingers independently pluck syncopated melodies on the treble strings.
So the thumb is the metronome, and the fingers are doing the dancing. I always thought that original version sounded like a music box.
That's exactly it. The physics of the capo create that music box effect. Because the strings are clamped so high, the sound decays quickly.
It gives you this bright, effortless, sparkling Californian tone in the key of Ebb major.
Yeah. If you were to picture it, Buckingham's playing is like a Swiss watch where all the gears lock perfectly together.
But Corgan didn't know any of that. He couldn't figure out how Buckingham got that specific sound because he didn't realize that capo was involved at all.
Right. So he took his Ovation Balladeer acoustic guitar and detuned the entire instrument down a half step.
Oh, wow. So going lower instead of higher.
Exactly. Because he's not using a capo, he's forced to navigate these incredibly awkward, flat, open voicings down at the bottom of the guitar neck, playing shapes like Blob and CM7.
That sounds like a nightmare for your hands.
It is. To emulate the original key, his fingers have to make massive physical stretches across the frets just to grasp an open Ebb 5 shape.
Wait, hold on. I'm having a hard time buying this. Corgan was a studio obsessive, right? You just said he painstakingly overdubbed up to 40 lead guitars on Siamese Dream. Are you telling me a guy with that much technical skill couldn't figure out a basic folk picking pattern?
I know, it is a wild contradiction, but he admitted in the liner notes that he, quote, learned it totally the wrong way.
That is just wild to me.
Yeah, Jimmy Flemian of the band The Frogs actually showed Corgan the easier, correct way to play with a capo, but only after the recording session was already done. The tape had already rolled.
Okay, let's dig into the acoustic physics of that. What actually happens to the sound when you ditch the capo and detune a guitar like that?
Well, when you detune a guitar, the strings lose their tension. They basically get floppy. You are no longer getting that quick music box decay.
So they ring out longer?
Yeah, because the strings are longer and looser, the full scale of the acoustic guitar body remains resonant. When Corgan strums, you're hearing the loose strings physically rattling against the wood.
Right, which produces a heavy, low-frequency rumble and a long, woody acoustic decay. Playing that way just sounds like trying to drive a car with the parking brake on, like you can hear the engine struggling.
You can literally hear the physical effort in the recording. He's stretching his hand so far across the frets to hit these weird chord shapes, his hand is likely cramping.
Just fighting the instrument.
Because of that strain, there are these minute acoustic gaps, these microtonal hesitations when he shifts his fingers. He's pressing down harder. The physical friction of playing it wrong completely mirrored his internal psychological friction.
So we have this heavy rattling guitar part, but how was that actually captured on tape? Let's step back into that lullaby space at the BBC.
Yeah, well, the contrast in the vocal delivery alone is stunning. Stevie Nicks' original vocal is warm, breathless, and maternal. She is speaking from a place of retrospective wisdom, looking back at her decision with clarity.
But Corgan's vocal is totally different. It's nasal, thin, dry, and terrifyingly present.
The microphone is so close to his mouth that you hear every breath, every slight waver in pitch. There is absolutely no polish.
It's so raw. When Nick sings, "I've Been Afraid of Changing," she is singing to Lindsey Buckingham.
Right. Yeah, it's a confession to a lover. But when Corgan sings that exact same line, the you changes. He is making a confession to his absent parents and also confessing to this monolithic alternative rock audience that demanded he remain a screaming caricature of teenage angst.
That makes total sense. So let's talk about the pressure of those 20 minutes left in the BBC studio. How do you even track a song that fast?
Oh, it was a sprint. They tracked it entirely live. One rhythm take on the acoustic guitar.
It's just one.
Then Corgan lays down a blind acoustic solo overdub, meaning he played the solo over a track that had no vocal guide to follow.
That is so risky.
And after that, he only had time for 2 vocal takes. As the clock literally ran out, Corgan told the engineer, Ted DeBono, to splice the front half of vocal take 1 with the second half of vocal take 2 right down the middle and left.
That's insane. And because they were using that older tape machine, we get that tape bias. Like the hiss of the tape wraps the whole thing in this nostalgic, claustrophobic blanket.
It really does. And the cultural impact of this 20-minute sprint was staggering.
Didn't it just start as a B-side?
Yeah. Originally, this track was just dumped as a secondary B-side to the Disarm CD single in early 1994. It was an afterthought.
But then it blew up.
It was later compiled onto Pisces Iscariot in October 1994. And even though there was zero traditional promotion, like no MTV music video, no big marketing push, organically exploded on modern rock radio.
It peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Modern Rock Tracks chart. Program directors at radio stations just started playing it straight off the compilation because the public demanded it.
It was exactly what people wanted to hear.
I want you to think about this for a second. Think about a time in your life when you completely dropped your defenses. Because the Pumpkins were famous for their massive wall of sound, their sonic armor. Dropping that armor was actually the most disruptive, rebellious thing they could have done in the grunge era.
It was. This cover performed a profound cultural service by bridging a massive divide. You had baby boomer classic rock on one side, which was expansive and romantic, and Gen X alternative counterculture on the other, which was cynical and focused on survival.
And Corgan proved that the existential dread Stevie Nicks wrote about in Aspen is a universal, timeless lineage. Like the fear of getting older and losing your foundation doesn't belong to one generation.
It translates perfectly.
I am so curious what Stevie Nicks actually thought about this loud, angsty grunge kid taking her masterpiece and completely rewiring its emotional core.
Oh, she loved it. She didn't feel intruded upon at all. She was deeply honored.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah, she publicly stated that there is nothing more pleasing to a songwriter than having someone else interpret their poetry and prove it belongs to everyone. It forged a real intergenerational alliance.
I love that.
Corgan actually reached out to her. Nicks invited him to her home, and they sat at her piano together and sang the song.
Oh man, just imagine being a fly on the wall in that room. That'd be incredible.
It really would. And that creative kinship lasted. Years later, Corgan ended up co-producing her 2001 solo comeback album, Trouble in Shangri-La.
No way, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, he played guitar and helped arrange tracks for her. The cover was the catalyst for a genuine artistic friendship.
That is such a great full circle moment. You know, the entire magic of this recording hinges on limitation. There was a lack of time, a lack of technical knowledge, and a lack of pristine equipment.
A perfect storm of imperfections, really.
Exactly. So in our current era of infinite digital tracks, perfect pitch correction, and endless studio time, are we engineering the happy accidents out of music entirely?
That's a huge question.
Will we ever get another raw 20-minute masterpiece, or have we made our tools too perfect to capture broken humanity? If you like this episode, please like and subscribe.